Hello, welcome to the Newsroom. With today's episode, I am Ali Ahmad, and today we will be talking about Afghanistan's, rather India's outreach to Afghanistan and how Afghanistan is being played as proxy at the hands of India, the nefarious role that India is playing, and the way it is using Afghan Taliban and the Fitna al-Khawarij in carrying out and sponsoring of the terrorism and the terrorist activities inside Pakistan. And of course, when we talk about Afghanistan, the leadership of Pakistan and the leadership of the United States of America, they're of the view that peace in Afghanistan is imperative for the stability inside the region. But unfortunately, Afghanistan is being used as the terrorist proxy by the Indians for carrying out the terrorist activities inside the country, inside Pakistan. As we speak of the Afghanistan's important strategic position, the Afghan economy is suffering, and unfortunately it is carrying out the terrorist activities inside the country. And when we talk about the peace in Afghanistan, it is imperative for carrying out for the stability of the region. And for today's show, the first segment, we have been joined by Dr. Syed Muhammad Ali, who happens to be the lecturer for Johns Hopkins University. Welcome to the show, sir. Can you hear us? Right. So with Afghanistan already facing a food crisis where 9 in 10 families skip meals, how is the Taliban's deteriorating relationship with Pakistan affecting the cross-border trade, the food imports, and the humanitarian supply chains? Your take, please.
I mean, obviously, it's having a very adverse impact on the humanitarian situation in the country because, it's a landlocked country. There is ostracization of the Taliban regime, and because of that, people are still suffering. The 20 years of nation building in Afghanistan proved to have been a dismal failure. I mean, the conflict lingered throughout that time, and while the Taliban regime has come to power now, the cross-border terrorism issue and its unwillingness to to become a reasonable government is limiting international aid and its relationship with Pakistan as well, with which it's had a very problematic relationship. And one can also look at sort of Pakistani policies which have created the current situation. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of stress on ordinary, the millions of Afghans who are facing food insecurity, water stress, and it's unfortunately, a humanitarian disaster, despite the billions of dollars that have been spent in the country, on the country. Uh, yes.
So, as we take a look back at the history of Pakistan and Afghanistan, we talk about the year of 1947 when Pakistan came into existence, and Afghanistan was the first nation to oppose the membership of Pakistan in the United Nations. So, as I refer to the ungrateful attitude of Afghanistan and Pakistan still pursuing diplomatic channels to establish peace in the region, what's your take on this?
Well, I think it's a bit simplistic to sort of use adjectives like ungrateful for nation states, because we have to realize at the end of the day that the bone of contention between Afghanistan and Pakistan has to do with the messy colonial demarcation of the Durand line, and that is something Pakistan thought that by backing sort of these myopic Islamists, overly militant, the proto-Taliban and then the Taliban regime, that, that will create some sympathy for Pakistan and its sort of position on the Durand line. But it hasn't. Even when the first Taliban regime came to power, it was unwilling to accept the Durand line as a international border. Pakistan's fencing, hard fencing of the border because of legitimate concerns around cross-border terrorism, I mean, they've created a lot of stress for ordinary people, the Pashtun, who have been intergenerationally traversing this porous border. And it remains a major bone of contention between the current Taliban regime and Pakistan. So, and that's why back in 47 also, because they were unhappy with the border demarcation, which I mean, which was extremely the result of that was border the division of the Indian subcontinent, of course, created animosity between Pakistan and India. It created a truncated Pakistan divided by India in the middle, and we know what happened to East Pakistan. So it doesn't have to, in my opinion, have to do with the Afghan people or sentimental position by the Afghan state. They are underlying structural issues which are rooted in a history and have been complicated by geopolitics that are sort of responsible for this acrimony.
Right, absolutely. As we are aware of the ceasefire talks that were taking place in Istanbul and mediated by Qatar and Turkey. But at the same time, when it comes to the peace talks, the Afghan Taliban regime, it is not ready to take pragmatic steps. So how do you see this?
Yes, I mean, it's been rather disappointing, disappointing because of the suffering primarily of the Afghan people who have been, seeing uh, even the last 20 years when there was, Western troops present. I mean, then there was conflict with the Taliban, and the situation has deteriorated significantly since. The Taliban regime, there were some hopes that, now when they come to power, the Taliban 2.0, they will be more pragmatic. But, that has not proven to be the case. Pakistan initially, tried to, work with them because, I mean, the US feels that, Pakistan had never let go of its support for the Taliban and was differentiating between the TTP and the Taliban. And initially the government did try to work with them, but the Duran line issue and this cross-border issue became a problem, and the Taliban have also proven, to be very, again, like resorting to repressive tactics. I mean, they're allowing girls to go to school to the primary level, but that's about it. Not allowing women to really work in the health sector, which is causing spikes in mother and child mortality. Extremely repressive, because now, I mean, to a certain degree, they are also facing some pressure from other groups like the Islamic State Khorasan, which is now positioning itself as the new resistance movement, and it's talking about the Taliban having turned complicit, you know, and having strayed from the path, and now they are, and the Taliban do fear that if they push back against hardline elements, try to be more progressive, they will see attrition. They will see their hardline elements going and joining something like the Islamic State, and that has been a persistent concern for them since they've come to power. And and this has like had them like double down on this idea of the Pashtun majority and this very hardline stance. And there are factions within the Taliban as well, but the dominant view of the Taliban remains rather regressive.
Yes, as you are pointing out that the dominant view of Taliban, it remains regressive. So why is the Taliban prioritizing nationalist or the ideological rhetoric over the pragmatic diplomacy with its most vital economic partner?
Yeah, that is, I mean, that is unfortunate to a certain degree. I mean, I think they lack also the capacity, and if they take on the TTP, because ideologically these groups come from the same place. So when I earlier used the word proto-Taliban, I mean, let's think back to the 1980s where, the US actively supported Pakistan, and there was Saudi involvement, and the militarization of of the madrasa system, to create, at that time, the holy warriors, as Ronald Reagan and others referred to them, because they were taking on the Soviets at that time. But subsequent to that, I mean, if you look at now the TTP, they want to, do what the Taliban are doing in Pakistan. So while Pakistan had, differentiated between the TTP, which were hitting the Pakistani state and providing some sort of, maintaining a relationship with the Taliban, which did, enable bringing them to the table with the US, but had also created a lot of acrimony. But for the Taliban themselves, if they take on something like the TTP, not only the TTP, but also hardline elements within the Taliban who fought alongside the TTP and ideologically are aligned will break away. So, that makes them, it's not that they are not playing ball with other countries. I mean, China's there, Russia is there, the critical minerals are a source of enticement. I mean, India, of course, has also repositioned itself from the 1990s, where it was working with Iran to support the Northern Alliance. It has shifted its stance, like Iran has, right? And they now have relations with the Taliban. And Pakistan fears that, India pushes back against Pakistan in proxy warfare, providing still support to, armed groups like the BLA and the TTP. And the Taliban have, maintained now relations, have forged relations with the Indian government as well. So it's not that they are entirely isolated, but still, despite these other linkages, I mean, Pakistan remains a very important player. I mean, if there's going to be some aspiration of bringing Afghanistan into the BRI, Pakistan will play a fundamental role in that regard, and just because of proximity. And the Pakistani position also, it has again used like these hapless citizens and pushed out Afghan refugees from the country. And now this situation may worsen where, again, there's, with this recent terrorist attack in Islamabad, again, like the hundreds of thousands of, Afghans who are struggling to make a living in Pakistan, again, being, subjected to suspicion, and being compelled to, go back to Afghanistan, which will worsen this situation on the ground. According to some estimates, I mean, 1.5 million have already been sent back. And Pakistan has not hosted more refugees, since the Taliban have come to power. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the citizen, the average ordinary citizen, who is bearing the brunt of, the situation.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Syed Muhammad Ali, lecturer at Johns Hopkins University. Thank you so much for your time with Pakistan TV as we were talking about the India's outreach to Afghanistan and the way Afghan Taliban is carrying out the terrorist activities inside Pakistan. And with that, moving on further on our next segment, that is, we'll be talking about the India's persistence and its hegemonic ambitions as we talk about the nefarious designs of the Modi government, the way it is resorting to destabilize the regional peace. And of course, when we talk about the fascist Modi regime, there is a lot of instability inside India, as well as the Ladakh airbase signals aggressive posturing on behalf of the Indian government, the weapons of the welfare that is being preferred by the Indian BJP government as we talk of the India's nefarious designs and its ill intentions. Let's take you back to the Operation Bunyanu Marsoos, where the image of Pakistan was distorted by India. It tried to distort the image of Pakistan by falsifying the information that Pakistan was involved in the killing of the 26 innocent individuals in the Pahalgam area, and the nefarious designs of the India. They stood out and loud in front of the world as the Pakistani forces and the government of Pakistan, they gave a befitting reply to the Indian misadventurism and towards the Indian posturing. And for this regarding this discussion on this topic, we have been joined by Air Commodore Khalid Chishti, retired defense analyst. Welcome to Pakistan TV.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ali, for inviting me.
Right. You're welcome. And as we talk, that India has become the major destabilizing factor in the region. The development of this airbase so close to the border of China can only be viewed as aggressive posturing at its best. So, how might this move impact the regional balance of power and the prospects for the long-term stability between the two nations? Your take, please.
I think before we take on the present situation, allow me to just take you back a few decades. It was 1962 when China and the Indian forces clashed, although for a short while. But the viewers should be apprised of the fact that Indians were so timid in that war that they did not even use their air force. They had the Ladakh and these bases towards the north, and obviously they could have threatened China. But then Mr. Jawaharlal Nehru, the Prime Minister of India, did not allow Air Force to take on any operations. And Air Force at that time was only allowed to carry out medical evacuation, transportation, and logistics. That is it. What I'm trying to bring home is that they have not had kind of aggressive posturing even for last about say 75, 80 years towards China. So it could more be of message towards Pakistan. Probably they're trying to look inwards from that. It's a northmost air base that they could have. Obviously, it looks into Himalayas, no doubt about it. But it'll be posturing would be towards Pakistan, I believe, and obviously the aim would be to stretch out Pakistan Air Force in particularly towards our north. But let there be no confusion about it. We have an operational airbase in the north. The Pakistan Air Force fighter jets were deployed during April and May in the northern bases, and obviously they were ready to take on any aggression. But I do not foresee any meaningful conversion of deployment into a meaningful force, probably.
Right. So India, in a manner, is not really dissimilar to the Afghanistan, as we earlier in the segment talked about the instability being caused by the Afghan Taliban at home and in the region as well. The Indian government is not sincere with its own people, so is neglecting the crippling poverty at home, and that is trying to pursue the hegemonic ambitions in the region. What's your take on the development of the Nyoma Air Base?
You see, this all is being done probably to create another hype in the minds and hearts of 1.4 billion population. We all know that elections are just almost in the process. They have had election, all some are in still pipeline. Next about 5 to 6 months, there are more elections to come. And probably the Prime Minister of India wants to avoid that domino effect, which means that obviously if one bricks fall, the other will automatically start to fall because of the momentum. The Indian Prime Minister is very obviously conscious of the fact, and what the world saw recent 5 to 6 months was that they took on Pakistan, obviously got a emphatic reply, but then regretfully for them, obviously, they were isolated by the global powers, especially the President of America. You've heard many times, more than 40 times he's mentioned about, and finally has said 7 brand new beautiful aircraft were shot down, or 8, obviously. What I'm trying to bring home is that in Indian government and especially the politicians are feeling frustrated about it. The elections are on the verge. And last about 78 years, I had never seen Indian armed forces towing a line of any political agenda. They obviously remain professional, and they are professional till today, but since May, I'm seeing that they have something to do which obviously they are not meant to do. They are not supposed to, or they are not built to tow any political agenda or political line. The performance, obviously. And I keep saying in different talk shows that you have to have a cause as a justification. If your cause is not justified, obviously what leads to the war will also not be justified, and that will lead to the performance, and your performance will also not be justified. So cause leads to war, wars leads to the performance. If your cause is faulty, and obviously you are ethically on low grounds, your war will not be justified, so will be the performance of the armed forces, which was the case in May this year. And you saw the performance, we shot down 7+1 airplanes.
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much for this comprehensive insight regarding India's hegemonic ambitions, the way India is trying to act as the destabilizing force, not just at home, but also in the region as well, the way the nefarious designs of the India they stand exposed. And of course, when we talk about the diplomatic position of the India, it stands very weak. It has weakened significantly. And this was the discussion about the India's hegemonic power. And with this, we'll move on further and talk about the COP30 that is underway as the world awaits the climate justice, and the leaders make vague pledges, and also this time the world awaits the concrete climate action. As of November 13th, 2025, the 30th United Nations Climate Change Conference is in full swing in Belém, Brazil, a city on the doorstep of the Amazon rainforest, running from 10th till 21st. And this COP of the implementation has drawn over 190 countries, world leaders, scientists, and activists to tackle the escalating climate threats amid the record-breaking heat and stalled progress. And for more discussions, we have been joined by Barrister Safi Ghauri, the legal expert, as he is participating in COP30 in Belém, Brazil. Thank you so much for your time with Pakistan TV. And as this COP30 is unfolding, is taking place in Belém, Brazil, so how significant do you believe and do you see it is for the developing nations like Pakistan?
Thank you very much for having me. And right off the cuff, I just want to say that conferences like these are absolutely imperative for countries like Pakistan. The reason why I say this is because Pakistan and the delegation for Pakistan itself, but also the likes of me and you know very well that Pakistan is one of the top 10 countries that have been affected by the climate. What COP30 this time around has re-emphasized is that countries like Pakistan get disproportionately affected by climate change. We have seen that in the types of floods that we have had. We have seen that in the types of droughts that we have had. We have seen that in the types of earthquakes that we are seeing, and many other environmental catastrophes that the Pakistani public is consistently having to face, despite the fact that Pakistan produces less than 0.01% of all global emissions, and we remain at the receiving end. So when it comes to a conference like COP30, it is absolutely imperative because it once again is a place where Pakistan can talk about its masses, millions and millions of people who continue to get displaced because of climate catastrophes that are taking place. And once again, to re-emphasize, for no harm and no fault of our own, 1/3 of the country currently is inundated by floods and glaciers that have been coming through the mountains. And the reason why we are seeing this is because of rising temperatures. So the fact is that Pakistan is definitely terribly affected. This is why we have seen that we've had a very high power delegation come in, comprising of the Secretary of Climate, and we've also seen Mariam Nawaz come in here. We've seen some key Pakistani figures who are now sitting talking about what climate change needs to take place and what kind of fundings need to take place. The discussions on funding are taking place right now as I speak behind closed doors. It has some of the major countries from Europe and across the world, the developed nations, which are talking about the plights of the likes of Pakistan and what could be done. So, I feel like, a considerable progress can be made. I am happy to report that $300 million have already been pledged globally by philanthropists. But so far, the countries have not come up with an agenda as yet. So that's still a matter that is under discussion. And I'm hoping that we'll see something soon enough.
Well, let's hope so. But as we speak from a legal point of view, and as we see that the International Court of Justice, it has ruled climate action a legal duty, and Pakistan's Climate Secretary Aisha Humaira also calls it the biggest human rights violations of our time. So, in your opinion, can this COP30 is going to really hold the polluters accountable this time?
It's a great question, and there is no easy answer to this, to be honest. Now, why I say this is because this COP30 is different from all other previous COP30s in that the theme of this COP30 is climate justice and human rights. So obviously, when Brazil took over as the president of COP30, one of the key agenda points that it had in mind was to have some sort of climate justice. But to your question, why there is still a long way to go for COP30 is because the country that pollutes the most and has the most global emissions, more than 40% of global emissions come from the United States of America. And we have seen that the American president did not only attend COP30, but also lambasted it as a conspiracy against the USA and said that he will continue to carry forward those emissions and will not, and that USA will not be held accountable. So here's what the problem is, right? The biggest violator of the environment is actively pushing the whole world into climate change denial, and is also actively stating that they do not want to participate in any form of climate justice. So when the worst offenders do not participate, then others who perhaps are not as bad do not feel obliged to contribute to this aspect of climate justice either. And it's important to understand here that even though the ICG is saying this, even though this is emerging straight from the United Nations, COP30 and and anything that flows from COP30 is not coercive in its nature. It cannot be forced upon a country. These are consensual agreements that countries come into of their own accord. And if the country decides that they do not want to follow it, there is no way to force a country to do this. And this is once again, to your point, this is once again what we're seeing right now when we talk about the climate financing and the protection of forests and the coalition on building methane and non-CO2 gases. These are being led by the likes of China and the UK, but we don't see too much participation from other countries. We see that some countries are perhaps punching above the weight towards saying that fine, we will give some sacrifices. China, UK, and Germany are key amongst them, but we don't see others doing it, and that's definitely a problem. So if it were to be as easy as them meeting in a conference and then coming to a conclusion from there, that would resolve everything. But unfortunately, it does not work that way.
Right, absolutely. So, do you think that this COP30 that is taking place, it is going to turn sympathy into solidarity? Of course, we know that the world leaders and the nations, they're aware about the sufferings of the global south. But is there going to be any tangible pledges that will be delivered as we talk of the pledges that were made in the name of the climate fund, the climate justice?
Yeah. Yeah, this is such a wonderful question, to be honest. The idea, if this can actually result in any solidarity. One thing that we've seen for a fact is that solidarity is definitely being expressed. The president of Brazil, President Lula, when he first took the podium to open COP30, spoke about a global South solidarity, and spoke about how all the countries of global South need to come together to assess and understand the kind of damage that they're facing and work together on trying to resolve it. And we've seen that it's not just between countries, it's also between communities. And different communities, indigenous communities from different places, are also stepping up and talking about how they can utilize this platform to talk about not just the idea of reducing carbon emissions, but also solidarity and justice in terms of access to.
Right, absolutely. That was Barrister Ghauri with us, legal expert, and we were talking about the climate justice. And with this, we come to an end of our today's show. From Balam to the Indus, Pakistan waits $30 billion that has been lost, and $0, unfortunately, they have been delivered in the past as well. We see that all these COPs that they stand as a very important platform for all the nations, especially for the developing nation. And as we talk of Pakistan being less than 1% emitter of the global carbon emissions, has the least global carbon footprint, still Pakistan is facing the brunt of the climate destruction. And with this, we come towards an end of today's show, The Newsroom. Stay tuned to Pakistan TV and keep watching